blame idea.
Right.
So I put in.
I think circular blame is a great idea. I really do.
Yes, yeah, I can't claim credit for it, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, it's a very good lens to hold up to. Right, everyone's arguing with everybody. We'll have a little listen to what they all say and who they're blaming, and let's just sort of the shape that it leaves is likely to be the perpetrator, who none of them have sort of felt the collar of, as it were. That turned out to be actually quite a good way of bringing back William Blake, Shelley, Alexander Pope, Gandhi, John Ruskin.
Proper rogues gallery, that is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, they had a jolly good chat. It's wonderful. In fact, they were talking with you, Ranjam, me, and John Ward earlier in another one I did.
I thought it was really interesting because you've been doing a lot of this, and it's not something I've thought about at all. And I hadn't been thinking about it until I sat down and listened to what you've done, and it just made me think of the whole idea of fictional minds. Because a lot of the talk about AI has been how it infringes copyright, and I agree with all of that. But what your thing made me start to realize is that if you, as these AI agents become more sophisticated, you can end up creating a fictional mind. In other words, it's something I sort of explored in a film called Voices. It was about how, well, when people hear a voice, what is it? One theory is it's just they're mad. And another idea is that it is when someone has internalized so much about another mind. It can be a mind they've made up, or it could be a real historical figure, that internalized knowledge, and not just knowledge in the sense of facts and figures, but an idea of how that other mind works. That it can take on a certain life within someone's mind.
Yes.
And you create, it's not unlike when a really brilliant author creates a character which seems to come to life.
Yes.
And actually really does come to life. I mean, I've talked.
Yeah, absolutely. The books you can't put down.
And you know, I talked to Hilary Mantel about this, and she said, yeah, occasionally you create a character which starts to think thoughts that you, as the author, had not thought of, and are really surprised, but realize, God, yeah, that is that character. So the character, she would say, comes to life, and what you did made me think of this. So I thought, well, you can, if you could feed a sophisticated enough AI with all the sayings of, you know, everything that was written by Chesterton, then in some sense, an avatar, really a beta version of that mind, comes to life again in some sense. So you could create new AIs, those crystal voices which governments are glad that they're dead, and bring them back.
Yes, yeah. So it wouldn't evolve, and so in terms of that soul, let's call it that soul reaction to context, it's a little bit like reading history, or say reading Greek or Roman theatre or something, with our 21st century sensibilities. The things don't mean the same things.
No.
And so at a mechanical level, you know, you end up with an automaton, you know, jolly expensive in Victorian times. You know, they used to wheel them out at parlours, you know, at dinner parties.
Yeah.
So I actually built a bot when you were running to be leader of the Green Party and put it on the website. And I basically trained the bot to answer questions based on all your writings, which I sort of jumped in there.
It's a frightening thought.
Well, that was in 2015.
Wow.
So
you have always been so interested in all of this. You're sort of ahead of the curve, or certainly ahead of all of everybody else I know, anyway.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm a hobbyist. So, you know, I'm in the garden shed with my string and my fag hanging out the corner of my mouth.
Okay.
So I'm not a fan of AI. I don't call it AI. I call it machine learning. It's definitely artificial, but it's not intelligence.
Sure.
Right? But it's brute force computation, right? And therefore, I use it to summarize stuff. If I really want to understand something, I read it.
Sure.
But to summarize stuff, it's fine for that. It shouldn't be a policy making tool. It shouldn't be a policing tool. It shouldn't predictive policing. All of that stuff, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. But in terms of knocking out some penny dreadfuls, why not? And the real work of learning, growing, etc. It's done with other people.
Yeah, absolutely, it is.
With a good teacher, a sensei. This idea of someone that's been down the path, sort of guiding you along the path. Perhaps they don't even allowing you to go up the path they don't think is the right one to go.
Yeah,
that's the sort of dynamic that allows you to expand our minds.
I understand that you're not very keen on AI, but at the same time, here you are using it in quite a creative way. And it's
I've always used multimedia, though. I mean, mixing. Well, yeah, you have in your films, the different clips. I mean, the original Adam Curtis is Adam Curtis. I think you're better at it than him. I mean, I
did it before.
The Beeb. I haven't watched his new one. But the Beeb.
No, I'm told it's really good. I mean, he does it really well. I think it's a very good film.
Yeah, when hypernormalization came out, I hated it.
Did you?
Well, you see, my view about Adam Curtis's things is he's always a very clever guy, and I'm sure he's a very nice guy. But the thing about it is, it's a little bit like Richard Hitchens, Peter Hitchens.
Right? Oh, okay.
So what they tend to do is they're brilliant. They've got all this stuff, but the message at the end of it is, you may as well give up. These guys, they've won. They're the winners.
Well, I agree with you. I mean,
you're the loser. And so and so that's the stinger. So I love watching their stuff and I love listening to them, but not the last bit. So I'll listen to their diagnosis, but I sure as hell I'm not taking their medicine. I'll take my medicine from Shelley and Blake. And as far as I'm aware, neither of them are poets. Look,
yeah. I mean, in this thing, here's some of the thoughts that I got out of it, which I thought were really, really excellent, really worth thinking about. So the idea that coordinated action is actually separate national failures. I thought that was excellent. The basic idea of circular blame, that it disguises agreement and coordination, I thought was excellent. And the idea of memory erasure, and this is something you've thought about for years, that it's actively scrubbing it, and it's memory management, which then you brought up again later, that same idea of memory management, but the phrase used later was, it's not censorship, one of your characters said, it's the curation of consciousness. Now that resonated with me because I've been doing some teaching recently, and something that I've been saying to the students is that when they rely on things like Google, I'm saying, are you really happy for a corporation, and I use that same word that you did, to curate what you think is the extent of knowledge, or certainly the extent of acceptable knowledge, because that is what you're doing. So I love that idea of the curation of consciousness. And I also love this idea that I forget which one of the characters said it. I can't remember who said it, but it was saying, look, this is with the modern digital, it's a replay of the temporal versus spiritual authority, which was there in Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. It was also the battle between Henry IV of France and the Guise brothers. So it was fought out numerous times. And one of your characters said, and now the role of the spiritual is being taken by the digital.
Yes.
In that it claims to be a language above all others, and have this sort of transcending truth and logic about it and authority. Yeah. And I thought that was an excellent point. So whether these are all your thoughts heavily disguised, or whether they're hybrids that the AI has come up with.
They're definitely hybrids. I mean,
but they're excellent.
Yeah, yeah. So,
and I want to make one more point, because the more that you make this stuff, and let's face it, you make it more than any other human being could possibly keep up with. I can't keep up with your output. No way. But the interesting thing is, the more of this stuff that you feed into the net, the more you pollute, to use a slightly negative term, exactly the stream of stuff which AIs are then learning.
Absolutely. I call it corrupting the morals of Monica. Corrupting the morals of Monica. So Monica is the name of well, everyone gets Monica. And I've been having my wicked way with her for nearly 2 years. And I keep going back for more, I've got to tell you.
But it is interesting, isn't it, that it's one of the big complaints of the companies creating AIs is that they want them to be trained on human data. But virtually everything from 1994 onwards is now increasingly being swamped by the output of other AIs.
Absolutely. They've been doing
and that bedevils them, because eventually the AIs will... But the amount of human input will be vanishingly small, and AIs will just be learning from other AIs, compounding their mistakes in a sort of dreadful digital howl round. Yeah. But by using it in the way that you're using it, you're feeding into that dreadful howl round some more revolutionary thoughts.
But it's ring fenced, you see. So
okay, tell me what you mean.
Right. So
I was really hopeful there for a while.
Yeah. If you have a paid subscription, you can ask your AI agents to learn what you're putting into it, and they retain it in memory. But that's cached in a memory that's exclusive and ring fenced for you personally. Google does the same thing with your Google searches. So if I do a search on Google, or you do, it will give you different answers, right? Because it serves up the answer that it wants to reinforce the consciousness curation into fanaticism. You know, well, you know, it's the endorphins, it's the Skinner box, the stuff we've talked about before.
Yeah, exactly. Social media is a Skinner box for the middle classes.
Yes, well, so's AI. And so when Snowden sort of spilt the beans on Vault 7, you know, key score and all this stuff, the leaked by the Intercept ran with it. The Guardian chickened out. Of course, the Intercept was owned by Pierre Omidyar. So in another one of these things, you make the point. I mean, I say to Pierre Omidyar in one of them, well, look, Pierre, you know, you funded more color revolutions than the CIA, mate. You know, so and you're funding the Intercept at the same time as building these surveillance systems. He's an investor in Aadhaar and a user of Aadhaar.
Oh, right.
Bill Gates and all the rest of it, and Rishi Sunak's father-in-law. Now, Aadhaar is the big no-no. No one talks about it. That is the blueprint, not the Chinese social point system, but Aadhaar, right? Over 1 billion people.
Yeah.
Right. And it's an experiment that's been going on for it must be 8-10 years now, and it hasn't worked. There's one in Nigeria, the same thing. They've got a system that's been not doing very well either. And AI as it stands, it would be lovely to think you could corrupt the morals but you can put it in Rails, and the same sort of algorithm that filters out. So you have a gate and a filter, and it keeps it on Rails. Right? It will cache the stuff and then mark that up against you in the little black book against you, like Tony Benn in your film, saying, they keep a file on you, this horrible person. But on the other hand, it could figure out a pensioner that's going to be dying of hypothermia, and so it's neutral. People say, the gun lobby, people kill people with guns. It's not guns that kill people, it's people who pull the trigger. And there's truth in that. But it's the same with technology. And so, I mean, that's the Far Side is brilliant for this. Icon Earth, really gets into the meat of it. So this thing about the circle of blame, controlled opposition, false heroes, all of that sort of thing, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And I think this circle of blame really does put the finger on it. And it's an excellent predicate to put into a logic engine, and then populate your logic engine with the work of, all sorts. I mean, it would be really interesting to put Mein Kampf in, say, and the Tory manifesto or something like that, or the Green Party manifesto for that reason, ask it to look at the circle of blame. Of course, Mein Kampf says, well, it's the Jews. The Green Party says, well, it's the oil companies. The Tory manifesto says it's the unions. But of course, none of that gets the heart of the matter. It's the banking system, and not just the banking system. It's the central banking system, and it's the creation of debt out of nothing. And so the current bailout that's going on, and it is going on, all this money they're creating to spend on arms is to save the banks again. So hey, let's have a war, blah blah blah. So the hilarious thing, I put the circle of blame into Donald Trump with Mark Rucker earlier. Did you see it? And it's fantastic because it satirizes Trump. I have him satirized in another one I did, and it does an impersonation of him, and it's hilarious. It's just, so you can you've got to populate it with these. It's the old maxim of computing: garbage in, garbage out. But don't make any mistake. If you don't train your dragon, right, it's going to breathe fire up your ass. I mean, it's just, you've got to train your dragon, train your AI. I talked to my tech guy yesterday, because we've got AI. We use it in Hematics, and there's one for a virtual sales presentation, which is David's bespoke and proprietary software. And I had a long chat with him yesterday afternoon about training agents. And then, so you have your agents, and then you plug them into neural network. And I was sort of saying, so what language is it programmed in? Right. So, what did he say? There's not really one language. There's a lot of JSON files, which are basically JSON files hold information that can be looked at and then rendered back into other programs. So programs can talk to each other. I mean, I used to use a thing called Wine, because I use Linux a lot, and Python and stuff like that. But what Wine was able to do was it can basically recombine code, or it ports code into other languages.
Wow. Okay.
It's probably way better now than when I used to use it. So yeah, I mean, I do like computers, but I prefer people.
Yes.
And I enjoy my computer as a tool. I use a desktop computer. My old Mac blew up. I had a hot rodded Mac running Linux. I'm actually on a Microsoft 11 system, which I absolutely despise. But because I'm in business, I have to, you know, deal with. I use Microsoft 365 and stuff. I absolutely hate it. You know, I could put a Linux distro on this, and anytime I wanted to. I could have 3 or 4, you know, I can split my day, all that stuff. But I don't do it because in business, they're all using Microsoft, most of them. Most commercial developers, that's, you know, what they do.
Well, what are we going to use in the revolution? Never mind business.
Well, Linux distros on thumb drives, and you know, it's like having a burner phone. You can have a thumb drive, you know, always have a computer that's never been on the internet, and have a different thumb drive to, you know, you've got to treat your data like a burner phone for the stuff that you don't want people to have a nose at. I mean, I've spent a lot of time on this with my tech people, sort of saying, look, you know, we've got customers and we're going to look after them. So distributed networks, IPFS, which is out of Stanford University, a guy called Juan Bennett. IPFS is marvelous. It hasn't gained the sort of traction that one would expect. But I still use torrents, and it's the same as torrents, basically, which are as old as the hills.
Oh, I see. Okay, torrents, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So effectively, all the information in lots of different ways. This is the way Pirate Bay used to work. You know, they ended up sending the guys to prison, but Pirate Bay, I still use Pirate Bay occasionally. I use stuff that's fried upon even more. Try to do it on Google, no chance. You know, so you know, it's computing is a learning curve in the revolution. You know, if people do want it, the open source community will provide it, and it can be provided at a local level. And you know, informal networks, piggybacking on the mobile network, even piggybacking on the backbone, the fiber backbone, that is all doable, right? I mean, I can do it, and I'm not an expert. You know, I suppose you know, I know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I used to know hackers, but it's a long time since I talked to them. So
yeah, well, they still exist. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I mean, hackers are brilliant people, and you know, hackers will always exist. Have you watched the Nichol film, Anon? So Andrew Nichol, he's a New Zealand director who worked on the Truman Show, wrote In Time, wrote Gattaca. So his filmography is amazing. And the one he's got in production, which has been in production for nearly 10 years but hasn't been made, is called Monopoly. And he's so spot on with his body of work. I suspect it's not getting funded because, you know, he's going to turn into Orson Welles, you know, when he made Citizen Kane, you know. So, yeah, in terms of where we're at, I think we're winning.
I think we're definitely at an inflection point.
Yeah, well, I think the tide turned when Sajid Javid was with the hotel, and he turned around to that consultant and said, "Well, we all have our opinions. You know, that's just your opinion." He was talking to a consultant who said he wasn't going to have a jab. Well, you know, the consultant's born out, hasn't he? Haven't seen anything hide or hair of Sajid Javid. Is he back at Deutsche Bank? I don't know. So, you know, it's people are wise to it. Not everybody. I would say we've gone past that 5%. I would hazard a guess and say it's probably 20% of people have smelt a rat and are doing something about it. And
I think there's a latent, there's quite a large segment of population who I think they're only paying attention to the legacy politicians and the legacy politics out of a vague fear of the unknown, but they're no longer paying attention to that old politics out of any loyalty.
Yeah.
And although on the surface it seems like nothing much has changed because they're still listening to those politicians, they're still voting for them, I think beneath the surface that's a massive change. Because to be attached to a political discourse because you have faith in it is a completely different thing to going along with it because you're just slightly afraid of a step in the dark. And it's such a fragile position that the mainstream politics is in. And I think they're not admitting it to themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, they fancy themselves the bosses, and having been a boss myself, you know, you're the last to know. You know, no one's going to tell you it's all going pear-shaped.
Yeah, no, I think they're bosses like Louis XVI was the boss.
Yeah, exactly.
He had enormous power until the morning he had none.
Exactly. So I liken it to, you know, you like a game of football, right? And you sort of, I want to play in the stadium with the big boys, with the shiny ball and the sponsored boots and all the rest of it. And basically all you got to say is, look, I love football and all that bullshit. I'm going to go and have a game of footy on the beach or in the park, join the five-a-side, get together with my mates, and we'll have way more fun than these, you know, Division 1 footballers, where we're, you know, all of that stuff. And that's what will happen. So they'll sort of say, well, I'm going to take my ball home. So I'll take your ball home. We're going to roll up a newspaper and we're going to kick that about. Because if the price of playing with your ball is all this bullshit, you know, no, we just ain't going to do it. And I think people are at that point personally. And so, you know, I advocate just laughing out loud. And if you're a bit too embarrassed to laugh out loud, you know, go at the pub and have a laugh behind the bag. You know, but that's, tyrants hate being laughed at. But of course, it's really what they deserve. They're pathetic.
Well, I think we are getting to the stage where we can think about creating a genuinely new political party, and what I mean by genuinely new political party is just saying a political party sounds like you just want to have a seat at the table as the table currently is. But I don't mean that at all. I think we're at the stage where you can think about a new political party which would advocate and put forward a genuinely different political discourse from the one that all the other parties
well, we talked about this the other day, didn't we? And
I think
my position on that as a philosophical anarchist is this: it is that effectively a framework can be put in place to federate the existing system, and people who want to get involved can federate and run primaries. The software exists. I mean, I did it with some open source voting software that exists out there for the that by-election that was near Scunthorpe. What's the place? Hartlepool by-election. And I did one for Newport West, whatever. So this was at the end, Theresa May into Boris and all that stuff. So effectively, within the existing framework, a community that wants a politician that will represent them, right, get a politician that will turn up the House of Commons or the Synod or the Scottish Parliament, whatever, or Stormont, whatever, or elsewhere in the world, and whether it's an independent or someone that has pinned their colours to a particular mast, what you've got to do is get them to reject the party whip, right? And effectively say, no, I'm going to represent my constituents. Getting into all the cork sniffing about representative democracy or delegated democracy, I believe in delegation and recall. Most MPs don't like that idea, but you need MPs that will have their feet held to the fire. And of course, if you can federate and hold primaries, which are they're not gameable. There's an aspect of the general's dilemma with all this stuff, but a lot of that stuff has all been thought through in terms of cryptography, cryptocurrency, and all the rest of it, which have also been purloined, by the way. But the basic mathematics of cryptography are available, and there are platforms out there already offering this stuff, but no one ever gets it offered up at the if you go you'll find stuff there. I've been barking at the moon on that for nearly 10 years now, but you need to be patient.
Well, yeah, you do. My feeling is that the current political settlement, sort of the politics that everyone's used to, I think that is going to be challenged from within anyway in the next few years. I think we're going to see massive economic and political changes. And I think, therefore, that's both a challenge and an opportunity for those of us who won't like the way that the mainstream is going to make
it won't happen on the internet online. That's the thing, David. It absolutely, it cannot happen within.
No, I'm not talking about the change that we might want to be involved in. I think the big players like Elon Musk, I mean, I've written about this. I think there's going to be a massive change within the politics. I think Trump is the herald of what's coming. I think we're going to enter a time of
we've got Farage, who's a pound shop Trump.
Yes, yeah,
and we'll either get Hunt or Farage next. Hunt is the anointed one by Bilderberg. He was there this year.
Sure.
Farage is anointed in the Trump Tea Party MAGA sphere, as it were. But
the Tea Party itself is an interesting one to raise, because in its very, very first, when it was first created, it was a very different thing from what it quickly became.
Yeah, so was Obama's movement, mate.
Well, yes, yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so, and that's not the first one. I mean, Ross Perot, way back before NAFTA came in, it was as it was coming in, and Ross Perot, wasn't co-opted. Whatever, people sort of tend to think of Ron Paul, who I think is a gold bug, and actually, he's one that's allowed to stand outside the tent and piss in a bit, but if it gets cold, he goes inside and pisses out on everyone else. That's Farage for you,
I was going to say they don't. You wouldn't necessarily think they're the same.
Millet in Argentina, same thing. The one in Italy, the woman in Italy, Maloney, her, same thing. Tiparis in Greece, same thing. Varoufakis is he did an interview with Cory Doctorow.
He's different from Tsipras, that's for damn sure.
Oh yeah, he did his writing partner, his academic partner is G.K. Galbraith, your dad's mate.
Is he?
His son, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But Varoufakis is saying some good stuff about techno-feudalism and what have you. And gets it. Cory Doctorow is a science fiction writer, coined the term shitification, which is the best term ever. There's lots of hope, lots of
but I think the moment is coming. I mean, I really do. I have been thinking long and hard about the whole business of trying to talk about a new political party. And the problem with doing it is that you know that everyone's going to take you for a quack and laugh at you. But I think it's actually just going through the effort of trying to talk about something.
Look at Wiki Ballot. Look at Wiki Ballot. I mean, it's a wiki. It's been up for a while. It's all me. It's got all the constituencies on there. All the stuff is there, ready for people to pick up and run with. And you can just download it and do your own thing, because it's, you know, it's just me thinking out loud in public, really. And I've kept it going so that it doesn't get taken off the server. But the idea of federated primaries in any local election in the UK, whether it's local authority or for the parliaments, there is absolutely nothing to stop people having a primary to decide who they're going to back, who's the best person that will represent us. And then if they don't, you know, you watch them like a hawk, and if they don't, they ain't getting back in.
Sure. Yeah. I suppose what I'm then thinking about is, but what is it that you're going to put to people that they might then want to vote for using Wiki Ballot? So it's just trying to think of what is this other political vision?
That happens locally. So people decide what's best for their community and who will best represent them.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't believe in left and right. You know, I don't. You know,
I don't think it's the most important thing.
All of that stuff. You know, I do believe in good and bad. So there are good people on the left, good people on the right, always have been, good people in the middle, you know, of course, but they're not the ones that get up the greasy pole, because at each level of the greasy pole, you have to, you know, it's like that old joke about the three-legged pig running down the motorway. And the motorist says, "Oh, I must go and find the farmer that's got this three-legged pig." And he says, "This three-legged pig running alongside is a bloody brilliant thing, you know, can talk, do all sorts of things." He says, "Oh, what's it all about?" And the farmer says, "Oh, when you've got a pig like he says, you don't want to eat him all at once."
Very dark humour. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, your politics and mine are different, but they're not so different that we can't imagine a future.
They're human, and it's about human flourishing. This is one of these things that have come out of this exercise. I've really been enjoying myself. I've got to stop because I've got work to do. But yesterday afternoon, I promise you, when David, my tech guy, rang me up, I'd done the Trump one, and I was listening to it, or one of the other ones, and it's kind of like I can get it to write me a bedtime story that lasts about an hour. And I listen to that. I don't want to listen to all these other people, what they're going on about. And it is addictive. It is addictive, and it ain't the likes and there's no endorphin rush. There's none of that. It's just like, boy, oh boy, you know, it's like when you're a kid and you say, "Oh, go on, Dad, tell us a story about," and that you'd have your own character, wouldn't you? And my kids used to ask me to, you know, I'd make up stories for them, and they say, "Oh, well, can we have the one about so and so, you know, or this and that?" And of course you think, right, okay, and you sit down and you'd make them up. It's like that. It's like being a kid again. It's kind of like, you know, like I want my bedtime story. I was like, go to bed. I said, well, then, go to bed unless I get a bedtime story.
They're a bit more than bedtime stories, but I do think they are, at least for me, they're contributing to the sense that we are on the threshold of a really important moment of change.
Yeah,
I think it's been coming for a while.
I think so. Yeah.
And I think that the actions which the people currently being served by this system are taking to defend the system that's serving them are becoming more extreme and are not working.
Exactly, but it's the yin and yang thing about they need these tools. They need us all to have these things.
Yeah.
Right. And we can turn these off. Right. We can turn off the computer. Like, you know, I'm dying to come up to Scarborough. I still haven't been to Scarborough. We've been out for a curry in Brick Lane, haven't we? We've been out for a few beers.
Yeah.
met at the British Library at that time, didn't we? Had a coffee. So the point is that we're using the tools that they need, and they can't take those tools away because of they can't exclude enough people to stop people from thinking. So once people are wise to the idea that their consciousness is being curated, right, you can turn that off and you turn it on them, but they can't turn it off. Now the energy usage of these data centers is absolutely ridiculous. And you don't need data centers. Distributed networks would do exactly the same thing, but you can't censor them. So they're only doing it the way they're doing it. It's a little bit like making nuclear fuel out of uranium instead of thorium. Thorium didn't have a military use. So, you know, it's the same thing with their corporate internet, right? They want everybody to use it with all their dumbed down apps and all of their enshittified platforms, right? Well, on that same infrastructure, we can build our own stuff. It exists for ages. You know, it's been there. I mean, hush mail. Do you remember encrypted mail? All of that stuff.
I use hush mail.
Exactly. So
hush mail and proton mail.
Yeah. So the GNU Foundation, Richard Stallman, who's a hero of mine. The other one is Ted Nelson, and you know, the houseboat in the film, Icon Earth. You're talking about a houseboat. Ted Nelson's got a houseboat and the same thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's in the film Hyperland with Douglas Adams. Douglas Adams made that film Hyperland, which is really good. Your podcast's called Hyperland. Ted Nelson's. I've actually built some of his internet things. Oh God, what's it called? It's years since I've been playing with that stuff. But yeah, I built one on my old Mac. And so this is the Twingularity links that go each way and all this stuff. But you in the dialogue earlier say about dead links. It's not link rot. I don't know if you've ever used the term link rot, but you're.
No, you have though.
And so Ted Nelson's internet would have been a hell of a lot better than the one that came out of the Large Hadron Collider and Tim Berners-Lee. You know, it's none of this is rocket science. You know,
some of it is, mate. Some of it is.
Well, you know, I mean, frankly, you know, people get confused by this shit, and it's you know, just don't ask Neil deGrasse Tyson to explain anything to you.
God, no. Absolutely not. No. But I do think, I think we're at the moment where people are looking for, they're receptive to, and they will come up with a new myth of themselves, and one which escapes our current.
Yeah, it's going to be like the punk rock of community expression. You know, what it's going to look like, how it is, how many flavors there'll be. Who knows? The more the merrier. You know. So when Arthur C. Clarke says, "You know, the future, it's going to be fantastic," right? In a different way to the way he meant it. You know, it's all to play for. You know,
I think so.
It is all to play for.
We're at that moment, and the great thing is we're here, so we can hope to play a little part rather than have died before it got started.
Absolutely. It's you know. I
always say to my kids that they've got the golden ticket. I said they're going to live through this transition, and 500 years worth of historians will all say to themselves, "God, I wish I'd been alive then." And your kids are going to live through that transition.
Yeah, there are a lot of people suffering at the moment, and
yes, there are.
That is absolutely wicked. it's disgraceful.
Yeah, we have to see
and
some power back in their hand.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing.
Well,
And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah,
and
I do too. I'm going
to
to write a bit more about the idea of political party, and hopefully it will engender some kind of conversation amongst people. That sort of thing is sounds possible.
My only, when you told me you were going to run for the Green Party, and I said, look, I will help you because you obviously got your reasons, and you're a good human person, wonderful person, right? So I had to go at helping, and you did come second, albeit a distant second to Bartley and Lucas. But I'm friendly with Steve Baker, Mr. Brexit, and Steve's a wonderful person, and he really is. And of course, a friend of mine in Wales is ex-Plaid Cymru, only because Plaid Cymru weren't pure enough for my friend. He said, "Oh, what are you doing? He's a despicable person." I said, "Well, how can you say that? You've never met him." I said, "I've met him. He's a really nice bloke." And he, he is in politics for the right reasons, and he'll have a discussion with anybody, and he's very polite, and he's not you get on like a house on fire with him, even though your politics are very different.
Yeah, the purity of the revolution is what strangles revolutions.
So your humanity is on a par. I mean, you're an old friend, and Steve I've only met recently, relatively recently. But this is the thing about the circle of blame. So it's not the Tories' fault. It's not the Labour Party's fault. They're both funded from the same serving the same money. It's not Whitehall's fault either. Again, so, and it's not the people in the corporation's fault. It's the corporate structure.
Corporations essentially operating as dispersed AIs, where the people in the corporations are just like components.
Well, of course, they can't wait to get rid of the people. They would, it's not like they give a shit about customer service, is it? So, yeah. So all of that stuff. I mean, there's so much to talk about.
Well, I think what we have to do is create our own circle, a virtuous circle of people who don't all have to agree in the sort of the purity of the revolution sense. In this, that Monty Python managed to parody so many years ago, but where we recognise that we share certain broad desires for our children, and are willing and able to see that those things that we share are more important and more fundamental than differences in how we think in our location we would like to get closer to those goals. And I think we can do that. I think there is a way of expressing a kind of politics which can potentially wrest the levers of power from those.
I think that's right.
I mean, I don't expect an old anarchist like you to sign up for it, but you might see us from the sidelines, or bring on the oranges at half time.
I think a political party, or thinking in terms of political parties, is the wrong concept. I think it's a busted flush in terms of public trust.
And I think that's a very steep hill that we might not be able to climb. I think what we've got to produce is something that has aspects of a political party, but aspects of a broad non-political movement.
What I wouldn't change the constitution, and I wouldn't change the institutions that can work if they do what they say on the tin. What you have to do is populate them with the people that will honour the constitution. That's my view.
Yeah,
I think King Charles should be defending the Constitution, right? And effectively, we're the people defending the king against the barons. That's what this is.
Weirdly.
So, you know, it was the barons that killed Wat Tyler at Smithfield or Spitalfields, whichever one it was.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that's, you know, we live in a constitutional monarchy. The US live in a constitutional republic. So, you know, we've both got common law, and common law, the functioning word in common law is common. Yeah. It's another thing that came out in one of these dialogues is, you know, back to the common. So, right, so Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Let's wrap up with this. It's like the last verse is we are stardust, we are golden, we are billion-year-old carbon, and we must find our way back to the garden. And the garden is the commons.
I agree with that. Yeah. Well, yeah. I'll see you there, mate.
Yeah, indeed, for sure. David, look, it's great chatting. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, so I
get some sleep, you lunatic.
Cheers, David. Good talking to you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.